This video is brought to you by Squarespace. So here's a scenario. You spend $4,000 on a camera, a cinema camera. You strap a $2,000 lens on the front of it, and then you need to add some ND filter to it. So you go out and you buy yourself a $100 ND filter. Now, does that sound right? Is that like driving a race car, but then putting cheap tires on it? It just doesn't make any sense. So in this video today, we are talking about pro ND filters. Now, I get sent a lot of products to review on this channel, so I'm kind of starting this new series where I just take the products, I test them out, you see how they look, you decide for yourself what you think about the product. And obviously I'll give some of my thoughts along the way. And that's what we're doing here today. I was actually sent, for some reason, quite a bit of pro ND filters over the past couple months, so I decided to put them all together and do a kind of head-to-head battle of all these ND filters. Now, if you follow the channel, you're a longtime subscriber, you know I'm kind of a stickler about ND filters, and especially variable ND filters. I love variable ND filters. I get to, just twist the front of the lens, and I can change my exposure down to 1/8 of a stop if I want to. I like the control of that. But variable ND filters are basically polarizers stuck together, and they're just like cutting light in weird ways to lower your exposure, rather than just perfectly cutting it with one single piece of glass. Then the other issue you run into, especially like on something like my red Komodo that doesn't have a really good infrared pollution filter on it, you also need to somehow reflect away or cut the infrared coming to the sensor. So when a couple manufacturers reached out and they wanted to send me some filters, I obliged because I wanted to try out something that was a little bit nicer than your standard circular variable ND filters that you put in front of your lens. I've recently purchased a full matte box for my Komodo, and now I'm able to use full size filters and see how much better they actually are than the circular filters, given that they cost a lot more money. But here's the deal. They do cost more money. Sometimes they're a little bit more cumbersome, sometimes they're not. But the reality is you can have these filters for the entirety of your career. Whereas maybe eventually the quality of a little circular filter might start messing with your image in a way that you don't like, and you want to get something that's more professional. Maybe if you are upgrading your cinema cameras and you want to go all the way, here are some filters to consider. So we're going to start off with a filter combination that I've been using a lot recently, actually. And this is actually sent from Nisi. I've talked about them on the channel before. I really like their Swift system, which I reviewed on the channel before. Their true color variable ND that you can screw on the front of your lens. But they also sent me a full size variable ND filter. Now this one only goes 1 to 5 stops, and it does add infrared pollution to my Komodo. So what I have to do normally is stack another infrared filter in front of it. And for this test, I actually stacked one by a company called Element. Now, Element isn't like a big manufacturer from what I can tell. They're kind of more of a smaller shop. We'll talk about them more in a second, but this first test is with the Nisi variable ND filter and one of the Element infrared filters in front of it to make sure I didn't get infrared pollution. Now we're outside. I'm dealing with the sun just kind of moving in and out here. The lens is at T4. And the image looks pretty good. This is just a nice Rec 7.0 image right out of the red Komodo. Now, it's important to note that that cloud did move in because we're gonna use this shot later when we're comparing to another filter where I was only able to get a shot with a cloud, and that really changes the color temperature and stuff like that. So it's something just to consider when you're watching this. And so far this color looks really nice, and I don't see any weird casts going on, which is a big benefit right out of the gate. And that's good because this little setup that I have right here, if you include the variable ND and then another filter in front of it, we're looking at a $950 price point basically. So for the next one, we're gonna be talking about Format High-Tech filters. Now, Format High-Tech has a line called the Crest filter line, and these are slim filters. What's really cool about these, your standard matte box takes a 4mm tray. Usually filters are about 4mm in thickness, but these are kind of fun because they send you a 2mm tray, which keeps the filter size smaller and lighter, and then all of their filters are 2mm. Now these are infrared NDs, you have to stack them to get more or less ND. And if you get a 5 filter set from them, it runs you about $1,125, but that does come with the tray as well. Now I believe the cloud came in on this one, so I had to adjust my color temperature up a few thousand degrees, which isn't going to give you a totally accurate color compared to the other ones, but you can see here that the image looks pretty nice. There's a little bit of ghosting going on this Nisi comparison, and I think that's because I didn't maybe have one of the filters close enough to the lens for some reason. I don't think that would be an issue commonly. I think this was just a mistake when I put it on the matte box. Obviously the color temperature is gonna be a little different between these two. I tried to match them without changing tint or anything like that the best I could, just using the raw settings on the red, just because that cloud moved in and did change the color temperature. Then next, we're gonna try just the Element filters as is. Now, something I want to say real quick about these filters, which is really awesome. So you get 7 filters in this kit, ranging from a 0.3 ND all the way up to a 2.1, and they're full spectrum infrared and UV blocking. But what's different about these is that they're hot mirrors. And what that means basically from my understanding is that we're reflecting away infrared light rather than filtering the light. This is a different way of, filtering the infrared pollution. And let me tell you, hot mirrors are awesome. The only problem with them is you got to make sure that the mirror is facing away from your sensor to be able to reflect away the infrared light. And infrared pollution is a big deal. I remember I was asked to go out on one of my first big jobs ever. I was asked to shoot for 3 weeks on the road, national commercial for ESPN, bunch of footage. I was shooting with the Red Epic. This was like 8 years ago, and I had some cheaper ND filters and they caused a lot of infrared pollution on my Red Epic that I was shooting on. And some of that infrared pollution actually made the commercial, and it bummed me out, and I swore that I was never gonna do that again. So these hot mirrors fix that completely. The element filters actually also are waterproof and have an oil-proof coating. They have a scratch-resistant coating, and it uses an industry standard coating. So these each come in individual pouches. They're nicely marked, and the kit will run you about $1,200. Now the sun came out for this one, and these images look really nice to me. The color is vibrant, it's all there, it looks accurate. I have zero complaints with these filters. I actually really like them. And getting 7 filters for that cost is actually pretty good in the space. Okay, so those are the 3 pro filters that I was sent. We have the Nisi, we have the Format High Tech, and then we have the Element. But just for kicks and giggles here, we are also going to compare it to the Nisi Swift system, the screw-on filter, the stackable filter system. And I'm also going to be including with this kit the infrared UV filter on the front of it as well. So the baseline variable ND kit is around $309 for an 82mm system, but then to add that infrared UV cut, you want to add another $129 to the kit. So roughly $450 compared to the $1,200 we're talking about with these other filters. But something to be said is these are just 82mm and only can screw onto so many lenses, whereas the full-size filters go into a matte box and they will fit on the front of basically any lens in existence, so that future-proofs you totally. But looking at this, the colors look great. The colors seem to be maybe a hair cooler than the rest of the lineup, but that doesn't bother me. I think it looks good. The colors are very nice. There's no infrared pollution. If there was, my black shirt would have a bunch of red mush in it, but right now it just looks black, even a little teal. Some of these UV coatings add a little blue to your shadows, which is not a downside in my opinion, but it is something to consider that might be happening here. But either way, I think this image looks really nice. So here's all of them stacked together. Please consider that there was a cloud that moved in on the Format High Tech one, so that one's gonna look a little cooler than the rest of them, but overall should look similar. I also used a clean control here where I just sharpened the shutter and I took off all filters, so you can use that as your baseline for color. I'm a bit confused why the Format High Tech kind of looks like it has more shallow depth of field. The aperture should have been the same on all these, but for some reason the Format High Tech looks a little more shallow. This is not scientific by any means, clearly. So it's really kind of hard to tell, looking at these like this, like if one's better than the other. But what I can say is these all look really good. There's not any weird, harsh green cast. There's no infrared pollution being added in from any of these. They all look pretty good. And that's probably why they cost so much money. And they're something you want to have in your pro kit. So Format High Tech also did send me a couple softening filters that I never heard of before, and they said in the email something about Greg Fraser tested one of these out. So we're gonna also just throw those up here on the screen here in a second. But before we do that, I wanna talk about this video's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to present your work online. If you're a cinematographer or a photographer, you're looking for a place to put your portfolio online, Squarespace is the place to do that. It just makes it so easy. You could just use one of their pre-existing award-winning templates to get going or build a website from scratch. But either way, the tools are so easy to get that job done. They've actually updated their system recently, and you can actually use this kind of snap grid system where you can just move things around on a page and align it and design it however you want. It just gives you the total freedom to design a page that best represents you and your style and your work. You can obviously embed videos on the page from any site like Vimeo or YouTube, which just makes it seamless to be able to upload your content and show it off online. So if you're anything like me and you need to present your work online, well, you can just do that with Squarespace. Click the link in the description to get 10% off, and I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Okay, so this is a quarter soft silver which is not to be confused with the Pro Mist or something like that. It's just it's softening the whole vibe, and it's doing it in a more neutral way, and that's why they call it silver, I believe. But they also sent me one that was called Soft Gold, which just sort of warms everything up while still giving that softening effect. These are just kind of fun filters, and if you're looking for something to, you know, kind of add a creative look, these might be something to consider as well. Okay, so that's all I have for this video. Ask me any questions about NDs in the comments below. And as always, until next time, guys, I'm Citrus Sakurai. See ya.